Okay. The organizations that survive disruption of this magnitude will be those with the resources to innovate the fastest. Ray Dalio, TED Talk post-COVID. And my question to everybody here today and to ourselves is, what if every single individual and every single organization actually does have the resources? If we can just think about it differently. When I was a little girl, about 7 years old, yeah, we lived in Valencia, which is a suburb north of Los Angeles. And my mom was 29 years old. She had me and 2 younger brothers, and the house would get crazy and chaotic. And of course, on the weekends, to get all of the energy out, we would go to the beach and we would play in the waves all morning. And then we would slave away on building these huge sandcastles all afternoon. And we'd build sandcastles that had multiple layers and designs, on the walls and a big moat around them, maybe put a little alligator in it. And we would be so, so, so proud of our sandcastles. And then, of course, what happens? The tide comes up higher than was expected. And no more sandcastle. Disruption is not innovation. It's not Elon Musk. It's not Facebook. Disruption is an event, a story, or an innovation that unravels what was, that throws us into very uncomfortable questions, takes things away, and challenges us to rethink what's coming next. Now, disruption is not new to mankind, and we've all experienced it. I like to think of disruption as the frenemy of human transformation and societal evolution. War, death, birth, innovations that change the very way that we go about life, natural catastrophes, pandemics. None of this is new to mankind. But what is very new, and not to be underestimated, is the pace and the frequency that we are currently experiencing it. And we are not prepared as individuals or as organizations to cope with this kind of disruption, let alone to lead ourselves and others through it. Ooh. Now, in today's presentation, what I want to talk about is a fresh perspective on brand. Not the way that we typically think about it, but a more authentic, truer, meaningful way of understanding brand that can actually help us to lead ourselves and others better through what we call the age of disruption, an age of rapid transformation that is going to ask us to build new sandcastles regularly. Now, I have 3 objectives in today's presentation. The first one is to give us a little mindset shift as to what a brand really is and how it impacts our leadership. The second is to activate what I call your brand power compass. And the third is to understand how to leverage your brand power, to use this new way of understanding brand to actually help you to fail forward and to embrace rapid transformation in a kinder way. A few notes before we get started. This is interactive. I'm going to try to keep things a little bit more casual and in a dialogue. And I will say, with the tech currently also right now, there might be a few little pauses. So feel free to, in the chat, put in any questions that you have. I may break to answer them as we move along. Most likely we'll address them at the end. Second thing is, this is more of a creative presentation that's designed to get you to think about things differently. And I am going to be talking about more of your own personal brand and aligning to self. All of these principles are relevant at an organizational level as well. And so we can talk about how to apply that again, during the presentation or possibly afterwards. And I'm also inviting everybody who's on this call or who watches this presentation, if you would like to have an hour-long conversation afterwards to apply it to your specific circumstance, you can add that on the feedback form that's on the end. And I'm happy to walk through and kind of talk it in specific contexts. Okay, now, before we can talk about how brand helps us to move better in the age of disruption, let's just kind of get on the same page for a second. What in the world is a brand? In today's world, as we all think of, I think everybody I know, I say the word brand and I got, there's 1,000 different responses. So is anybody, let me just see if I can see everybody here. Would anybody like to take a little moment to kind of throw up what you think of in a brand? You can throw it in the chat or throw your hand up if you have something to add.
So I think brand is how you consistently show up. It's more of the characteristics and qualities that people see in me. It's sometimes what I value, but sometimes what other people value in me that I don't even know that's there.
Yes, that's a great way of saying it. Easily, and then I have easily and quickly recognizable summary of you and your organization. Absolutely. Oftentimes what I hear a lot of too is kind of what we think of more as a visual identity, right? So your logo and your colors and your outfits. And this is nice. That's kind of that outer, that's the cosmetic face of a brand. But actually, before I dive, I'll give you a little brief history of brand. Brand started, so brand actually comes from the word brander. Brander is an old Scandinavian word from the 1500s. And of course, it was used first to mark cattle. The word brander means fire, to burn fire. So we think of literally marking the cattle, marking tangible things to show ownership. So the brand said, this belongs to this person. And then something interesting happened in the 1950s, and that was with businesses scaling beyond just serving their geographic location, and media and Hollywood. And this is when we started to come into what would eventually be the Mad Men, right, the advertising age, where we'd hire creatives to create a story. We recognized the power of consumer stories, and we'd create these brand walls so that you would, right, tell the housewife that she's really sexy if she buys a certain kind of meat and she's going to be a good mom, da, 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 and then she goes to the store and she's like, oh, I really want that brand. So that's kind of, at that point in time, something really different happened. We stopped doing business with individuals and with people, and we started to do businesses with a concept. Then the arrival of the internet really changes the way that, that brands interact with people. Because what happens is we go from minimum touch points, right, like an advertisement and then in the store, and we start to open up to multiple touch points. Meaning anybody can look at who a brand really is. I can look at your social media, I can look at your reviews on Glassdoor, I can look at your reviews on Yelp. A brand starts to, you can't really hide behind the brand wall anymore. So if you think of it as almost, we moved from marking physical objects into marking the human psyche with stories. And all of a sudden, this interesting thing is starting to happen, or has been happening, with the arrival of inbound and actually let me show you who I am. We move into almost holding, if you think of like holding a fire, holding a torch in the middle of the dark. And it's really about how do you make that fire brighter? And how are you attracting people in? At its core, again, when we're talking about personal brand especially, but this is applies for organizations as well. A brand is you. Whether you like it or not, whether we want it or not, each and every single individual is a brand. Every single business and organization of people becomes a brand. So a brand is you, and how we become stronger as brands is how we get to know ourselves better. It is our reflection in this world. And the question is who you really are and your reflection in this world the same? Or are you trying to be something that you're not? So how we make that brand stronger is how we become more and more of ourselves, and we get better at actually revealing who we are and showing our uniqueness, our unique extraordinary, and how we can best contribute to a project, a community, an organization, or society at large. Across continents, oceans, and time, mankind has always ventured into the unknown. Sometimes to seek refuge and to escape something really scary. Sometimes to take and to conquer. And sometimes out of the sheer curiosity of wanting to know what else exists in this world. And when we come into the unknown, into unknown lands, before there was GPS and smartphones, before there was even a map of known territory, how we would orient ourselves and be able to navigate is from the stars. And specifically, of course, the North Star. The North Star would help us to know, in general, I'm moving in the right direction. I can, if this route doesn't work, I can take another one. If I need to go backwards, I know where I've come from. Each and every single individual, we need North Stars. We need North Stars that don't trap us in one specific path. We need North Stars that really speak to the heart of us so that we can stay motivated no matter what happens. And this is the way that I'm going to talk about, and what I want all of us to start thinking about brand power is this core. Before we get into all the details of how it's going to manifest and what job and how to talk about myself, and we really need to get into this core of who we are so that we can be more adaptable and flexible. So if the job changes, so that you can shift really quickly into new companies. So that if your company goes under because all of a sudden the industry changes, you can change, you can collaborate very quickly and form something new. This is where I talk about needing this North Star and using brand power to really adapt in disruptive times. It's what allows us to also, the beauty of kind of shifting into this brand power is that we naturally start to differentiate. You don't need to you don't need to try to be something different. You already are. And as we go deeper into our brand, deeper into that core, we can innovate much faster. And we actually inspire loyalty in a much deeper way through these powerful relationships. Okay, hold on 1 second here. Okay, so now what we're going to talk about is something that I like to call a brand power compass. It's kind of your North Star. How do we activate it? And how do we do it without getting too in our heads? Because sometimes we get so technical in how we look at things. And I want us to get more into our bodies and into our hearts so that we can feel it and become more intuitive. And it allows us to move a lot faster. Oh, Hollywood. I'm 19 years old and I had recently dropped out of school, my first school, film school. I'm working 2 jobs, one as a receptionist, one as a server, and I'm putting all of my time and my energy into becoming an extraordinary actress. If you want to know about really, really competitive environments, trying to be a professional actor is ludicrous competitive. A casting director who is, like, if you think of your favorite show on TV, NCI, whatever show it is, and you've got that one little secretary that answers the phone, she says, "Hello, sir, how are you?" For that one little role, a casting director will receive about 2,000 to 3,000 submissions of different actors. From 2,000 to 3,000 submissions within 24 to 48 hours, they then audition on average about 25 candidates. So 25 actors will get to come in and audition. Now that 25 that gets called into the room, they're already politically connected. They already know about the casting director, so they already are kind of networked in. They already have a great reputation. They've all got those customer testimonials, so to speak. And they all are really good at what they do. At that point, you're coming in and you're performing with the cream of the crop. And so how do you differentiate? Why do they need to cast? Why do they need to read out of these 25 people? I was obsessed with being really great at what I did, but something was missing. I still wasn't able to stand out in these groups. And so I was going to every single coach on the planet, and every coach would tell me, this is who you should be. You know, you need to be the girl next door and fit into this box and turn your hair. I can't tell you how many times I dyed my hair different colors just so that I could stand out, be different. And finally, I read an article actually from a coach. His name was Craig, and he was speaking on authenticity and just being and stepping into yourself and having more connection to what you do. And so I decided to go see this guy because it resonated with me. And I came into his office, and I came in with my confidence and showing him exactly what characters I could be casted. I really wanted to impress this guy. We sat down and we read a scene, and he looked at me and he said, "Carley, you're obviously very trained and you know what you're doing. But I actually can't see you. I can't connect to you. I need you to just calm down and just be who you are. Just be present in the scene. Don't worry about planning it out and making it different." And I looked at him after years at really working at being other people and trying to stand out. I looked at Craig and I said, "You know what? I hear you and I actually know what you're talking about, but I don't know how to do that." And he said, "Okay, I want you to focus on 3 things before you do the scene again. 1, what is your intent? Focus on your intent. Your intent is to show me that you love me and raise the stakes. Make it the most important thing that it could possibly be. 2nd, don't give the director what they want. Don't show me what I want to see. Don't try to be what somebody else wants you to be. Show your leadership, your creative leadership, and your unique way of doing things. Trust yourself. And 3rd, it's not about you. Take the pressure off of you. It's about the bigger story. It's about how your character and how this scene and how you are serving the story at large. This is going to bring you into a much deeper sense of service." And so I did those 3 things. I connected up, just tried to get all of the other stuff out of my head, and I just focused on those 3 things. I read the scene and I was crying in the scene and then crying afterwards because I had never felt so free and so connected in my work. After coaching with Craig, I was brought in by every single casting director that I read in front of. And I went to director, an unknown kind of amateur actress with 3 other celebrities for the lead in a big film with the casting director who found Jennifer Lawrence and works with Darren Aronofsky. All from making these adjustments and starting to trust myself, my own creative leadership, and remembering that it's not about me. So when I talk about these 3 questions today, are really based on this concept, because what I have found in the creative process is whether it's acting, whether it's getting a team together, whether it's starting a business, in any context, these 3 things really help to anchor us into that true north, into that brand power. Some of them you've heard before, some of them might be a little bit new, but I really want to just kind of bring our awareness to these 3 areas. So the first question, we'll start with one of my favorite quotes. Don't attach yourself to a company, a mission, or a project, a person, a place, an organization. Attach yourself to a mission. There's a lot of talk these days about the purpose of mission, or the power of mission and purpose. And I think it's really important that we don't underestimate this because what a mission does is it really activates our heart. It activates our unique perspective, and it inspires other people to join us. It really shows your leadership, and it takes a stance. And it allows for this flexibility. If you think of like creativity needs a box, your mission is sort of kind of the setup. It's what focuses that creative energy. And there's a million different ways that it can manifest. Now, I don't know how many people, most people on the phone here on the call, have you guys have missions developed of some sort? I feel like a lot of leaders these days. Yeah. Do you use it regularly? Do you think about it on a regular basis and how it relates to brand or your leadership? Kind of, sort of. Yeah. The importance, the three things that I look at when it comes to mission, powerful missions, we raise the stakes and how to make them deeper. Is that a powerful mission really taps into pain. It tries to heal a problem that really breaks your heart now. In all of the creative things that I've done, and people have looked at my resume and my background, and they're like, what in the world? How has she done all of these different things? And what ties it all together? But my mission has always tied things together. And it comes from my brother. It comes from the pain of watching society's stories and systems kind of break down a beautiful spirit and not support him in the way that he needed to be supported. Everything that I do in some way is related to that. A powerful mission is also bigger than this lifetime. This allows us as leaders and as creators to not get obsessed with outcomes. It's not about something that you're going to achieve here. It's about moving the needle forward just a little bit. We can become more present in that way. And obviously a powerful mission also is something that really engages our passion. Passion is important. And it allows kind of our unique passions and our uniqueness to come out. So does anybody have any kind of questions or want to talk about a mission before? I feel like this is one of the more common ones, but I did want to bring it up.
Hey, Carly, I have a quick question. I recently heard, and this actually gave me a lot of comfort, but I always was trying to tie in my passion with my purpose. But I listened to a podcast recently that said your passion could be something that you're not necessarily like phenomenal at or meant to do, but that you should do it for your own personal like fulfillment and enjoyment, but that your purpose could be really utilizing your strengths and moving the needle forward on a mission through your strengths. I guess a good example would be if I love to, dance, but I was not meant to be a modern dancer. I went to school for that. I should continue doing that for my own self-fulfillment. And it's a passion of mine, but that my purpose is probably more likely to revolve around my like strengths and differentiators.
Yes. Let me try to think of the best way. When it comes to mission, it's like so actually in the second question, we'll kind of tap on this, what you're speaking to a little bit. So maybe we can come back to it and clarify. To give you an example of like my personal mission is to help awaken human extraordinary and to rewrite the big stories and systems to actually support it. That's a big, right? That's a very broad mission. And what that does is that's something that I'm very passionate on, the fact that our stories don't support people's best selves and giving people the power to rewrite them. But there are a million different ways that can manifest. So if I was a dancer and I was really good at it, and that's what we'll get into, that might be something that's kind of a similar theme in the work that I do. And what I bring up, right? It's kind of, it ties that service together. But I think the mission, the more that it's broad, then we'll jump into the next question, which is kind of our specific way. If the mission is why, then we get into the how. I saw a hand too. There we go. Okay, I'm still getting Martha. Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
So sorry, I dropped out. I had to switch computers, but I'm focusing on number one, aiming to heal a problem that breaks your heart, and trying to, I guess, kind of come to terms with that. Obviously, you can see how that applies in psychology, but psychology is so much broader than that, that it's not always a problem that breaks your heart, that there's, I guess, a more positive support. Our mission statement is recognizing and promoting excellence in the science and application of psychology. And if you're talking about, it obviously applies if you're talking about making sure people are well trained to help people who are hurting in counseling. But there's so much more. There's research, there's positive psychology, there's supporting students, and so much where tapping into pain may not be quite appropriate. So if you could
speak to that.
Talk to that.
Sure. So if you think of kind of the purpose, there's almost like two ends of a mission and purpose. The pain kind of gets to the core of the why you do what you do. So if the mission that you're speaking to, which is very common, and mission and purpose are often interchangeable, people look at them a little bit differently. I like to think of that when I talk about mission, it's kind of tapping into the pain, but it's not necessarily what you use in your wording, right? So if you have a mission for a company, it's more of the solution to it. But you as an individual, if you have a mission in life, like meant to rewrite the stories, to actually support it, but where does that come from in myself, and what do I tap into and remind myself of? That why is because I don't want more people broken like my brother.
And Carley, that reminds me of like our mission statement for the company is to create a space for accountability, connection, and results, not for this generation, but for 7 to come.
Right.
And the power of that is, one, it tapped into the mission that I don't want to see anybody as a human worker anymore. I want to see them as a full human being. And for me, it's helped me filter. So any of the decisions I make, it helps me to filter through on what should I say yes to and what should I not. So
exactly, and that we'll be talking about at the end. Yeah, definitely. But I think that why, that sometimes we jump so fast to that solution. My mission is to create this solution that's going to help things, and we forget about why we need the solution to begin with. And tapping into that as leaders and reminding, and especially when we're speaking to teams, when we're speaking to customers, that's a really deep part of the story, is to be aware of within ourselves. Why do you exist? Why does this solution matter for a greater humanity cause? And I truly believe that every single person in every single organization can make this shift. That underneath, that once we dig deeper and deeper and deeper, there's a deeper why that actually really matters on a humanity level. Martha, did that help a little bit? I just want to make sure to clarify that it wasn't.
Yes, that helped. Thank you.
Okay, great. And we can go through it a little bit more at the end too, when all these pieces sort of come together. Okay. Second question. This is one of my favorite quotes from Albert Einstein, who I love my grandfathers, but I do kind of wish he was my grandfather. Don't judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree. Oh, do we live in a world that tries to make fish into birds, and birds into cows, and see, we can keep going with that metaphor. The point of this is we all have unique services and things that are strengths, right? Are things that we do really well. And when we try, right now, our current hiring system especially is broken. If you ask any kind of thought leader or person that works in this field, they'll tell you the same. And a lot of it is because we create jobs, we try to put people into job roles instead of creating job roles for people. And every single person is unique I'm great at designing unique experiences that help people to connect to themselves, and I can design a wonderful event. But if you ask me to do logistics and take an event planner role, I mean, it's just don't. It's just not going to work out well. But most roles are kind of designed in that way. So when it comes to, again, we can look at this for ourselves. And then I want you to also think of it when it comes to recruiting teams and putting people together. The question, that's a really, really beautiful question that I wish we asked ourselves and other people more often. What service brings you joy now? And I'm talking about broad services, not I really like to write an email, to do email marketing. And I'm really good at coding. That's great. That's really great. But those are the kind of hard skills. And again, when we're looking at disruption, things are shifting around all the time. We've gotten really bad at being broad and understanding kind of the broad things and the broad services that we do really well. So some examples, of these broad services, so to speak. Things like this, helping to connect people to connect more profoundly to themselves, helping people to heal trauma wounds. That would be you could be a psychologist, you could be doing that in an organization, but kind of identifying these broader services and bringing our attention onto those. And when we're working with teams and interviewing people, think about these. What are they really doing? What is the service underneath it? And does it bring you joy? We are so much better at the things that we love to do. And I hear so many people say, well, we would all want to be the CEO. We would all want to be, the whatever. We all think that there are more flattering or exciting roles that exist. And I'm sorry, it's just really not true. Our compensation models make us behave like birds when we're actually fish. But if we can make some adjustments to that, the truth is there are people that like to do everything. I'm at a Buddhist retreat center in the middle of Arizona right now, and one of the women who's so beautiful, so kind, that leads this place, that helps to run this place, she loves to clean and like organize people and organize little processes, and she's obsessed with it. I mean, she does all of the, the gardening and the clearing outside. I can't stand this stuff. And I can't stand, but it makes her so happy. It's a service that brings her immense joy in life. So if we can all start to be more honest with ourselves about what that is, and be really honest with the teams that we're bringing together, what is it that really brings you joy, and let people do it. We don't need to force people to do things that they don't really love and they're not really great at. Just for this, it's not effective. Okay, so that's question number 2. Ask yourselves and other people, what service brings you joy? Next. Oh, this one. Big mindset shift. But luckily, I'm talking to a bunch of incredible female leaders, so I feel like we get this more than most of the people who run things right now. Innovation doesn't come from competition, but from openness and connectivity. Stephen Johnson is one of my favorite futurists and innovation authors. And when we really look at innovation strategy, it is through it's through collaboration. And right now, when we look at, if you even think about a large company, Viacom, I think we have JP, really large organizations, Coca-Cola, and when, even Ray Dalio, when he's talking about organizations with the resources to innovate the fastest, what these large companies have is infrastructure, and they have huge manpower and a lot of money and a lot of alliances, but it's all tied together through a larger infrastructure. But as individuals, we actually can do the same thing. As individuals, as small businesses, as small companies, we can also create these alliances that allow us to be more resourceful and innovate together and shift into different shapes faster. So the question that I want to kind of bring awareness to, and this is kind of getting back to that, what's the bigger story that I'm in my mission? How can I complete a larger story and work together with other individuals, organizations, communities, cities that are on a similar mission and have similar values, and start to complete an intentional ecosystem? This is how we're seeing a lot of networking. We're moving away from kind of more short-term networking and into building these appreciative mission and values aligned ecosystems. Why? For the most part, because we're going to work together better if I can trust you. If I don't trust you, we do a lot of handshakes in past businesses, especially, and it does not. We move much better when we actually trust each other and we have the same vision of the future that we're trying to create. So, we can think of it as a consumer. You're a part of an ecosystem. What businesses are you collaborating with? Who are you working with? Be more mindful of who you're choosing. Business partnerships, your community, colleagues, peers, power relationships. And if you're a small business, can you collaborate with other small businesses? Not just like partners, like, oh, we're throwing an event together. I'm talking about like joint services. All of a sudden, your business, you've got to cut down on your manpower and let some people go. Is there a way to shift them into another organization? This is the kind of stuff that we have to start kind of creatively thinking about that allows us to be more innovative and to adjust in disruptive climates. But it's really a very different way of thinking. So how can I complete instead of compete? Yes, hand.
This hits home for me, because just joining the real estate market here and being in a different market rather than residential, I am very competitive, and it's been rough. It's been a rough go, and I've been thinking more and more like this, but I just haven't been able to put it into such an elegant term. So I appreciate that.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. And even from your perspective, this is even if you think about, you're in real estate, right? If I remember, okay.
Yes, yeah, and commercial.
Yes, commercial real estate. So you can really look at those, aligning yourself to people that are outside of your industry, right. Even find, if I were to put it specifically in your situation, I think it's a nice example as well. Who your customer is, who your client is that you're really serving. What's the big story that they're in?
Right.
What is their larger story? And how can you find other partners and people who are completing that along the way? So it's somebody else might start them off, but you've got a strong alliance, they pass over to you, and then you can refer them to 5 other businesses, 5 other services.
And I've never thought about the mission. And so after you said what service brings you joy, I just wrote down quickly, helping people achieve their goals and or dreams. So this is wonderful. Thank you.
Great. Yeah.
And I want to pause there for 1 second. Caroline, I think it would be amazing if we can find a way and that's that we can all help each other complete one another, knowing what each other does. So like you said, you just moved from California. So if there's anything, I know I'm speaking for myself, but probably from other members, I know a lot of the members, if there's anything that we can do to help, don't hesitate to reach out. Because I think it's better that we all, as like Dr. Elizabeth said, it's all like a web and we all have our spots, and we all can lift each other together. So if there's anything I can do, and just make sure that we stay connected with one another afterwards. Because I think it's important. That's what the goal of CWLI is to support other women in this mission.
Hey, Emily, can I just comment really quickly? A group of women about 3 years ago now, determined that there was a need for exactly what you guys are speaking about, and that there was a gap, that although we did a great job of networking in CWI and building relationships, we weren't really utilizing each other intentionally to help each other with our mission or purpose or business, etc. And so we have a group all in different industries. I think there's 10 of us now. And so we meet monthly and kind of help each other do all of the things that are on this slide. And we have kind of industry exclusivity. So there's not several real estate folks, there's not, but we form a team and we all help prop each other up and kind of fill in these gaps. So we'd be happy to speak about it. We're all CWI members, but especially for you, I think it was Ashley, maybe helping you like find other people to form a similar group with.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd be happy to help you connect the dots on who else might be out there that could be helpful.
Yeah. Great. So that, again, as we're talking about kind of foundational things, there are so many ways we can break these three categories and just keep going, and that's the beauty. But I like to simplify, and especially, right, if we think about disruption being overwhelming, and for ourselves, if we can kind of just get simple and get back to these foundational questions, remind ourselves of these things, and remind ourselves of that kind of true north. That true north place, and then then we can strategize and start to get into more specifics. What is your humanity mission? What services bring you joy? How can you complete instead of compete in an ecosystem? Bali, 2019, so just 2 years ago. I was finishing up at a co-working space. I headed over to the bar across the street to listen to some music, be alone for a little while. And of course, there's a little group of some guys from some Brits from London, and they start to slowly move their way over to my table. One of them, particularly provocative, starts to get into politics and jab at me on a few things. And I don't mind it. I don't mind people that are a little bit difficult. It can be a little bit fun sometimes, actually. And after about 30 minutes, he recognizes that I'm a human being who actually cares and enjoys having conversations, and that he can actually trust me and we can actually have a conversation. And so we do. I love moments of intimacy with strangers. And he asked me what I'm doing by myself in Bali at this bar. And I told him that about 3 years ago, my life started to fall apart. That I recognized, I woke up one day and I was technically doing everything that I thought I should be doing. I was running an e-commerce business with my husband at the time. I was getting back into writing and producing, was actually doing my first film, my first short film. And I had a dog, was married to the kindest, most loving human being I can ever imagine. But something was not right. Something within me was not really aligned. And so for the next 3 years, I would go deeper into really what was going on within myself, who I was, and what was misaligned. And little by little, all of a sudden things started to fall down. First thing that I let go of was our business, because it was not aligned. Working in retail and in e-commerce didn't actually speak to my heart. It wasn't actually motivating. Building businesses is really hard. It takes a lot of work. You've got to really care about what you do to get through the hard times. And the truth was, at the end of the day, I didn't. So I had to let go kindly of a business that we had invested over $150,000. For a young person, that was very tough. Then I had to let go of Los Angeles, because at the end of the day, the culture and the environment really didn't speak to me. And so we moved to Chicago to have a different friend group and different values. And then I had to let go of my dog that was 4 years old, because he had cancer and had multiple, and we were going to be fighting with chemo. And so finally we made a decision to put him down and let him go. Kind of like my first baby. And finally, the reason that I was in Bali and the last thing I had to let go of was my husband. And we were actually there to say goodbye to each other and to celebrate 10 years of a beautiful marriage that unfortunately just got to a point where what we wanted and what we were able to give each other wasn't actually what the other person needed or wanted. And so what I've learned over that time was how to let go kindly of the things that are no longer aligned, and to allow transformation to happen within myself, within other people, and within society around me. We're often, we're not taught this, and it's a really hard thing to do. But when we're in disruptive climates, we are going to be challenged to transform much faster than we've ever transformed before. And so I found the phrase letting go kindly, because it gives credit. There's no such thing as failure. If we're talking about failing forward, the best way to fail forward is to understand that in this climate, failure just doesn't exist. It's not a thing. There's only learning and growth. There's only coming into better levels of leadership and alignment with self. And so what the brand compass can kind of do, if you think of brand being your work in this world and who you are and how you're showing up as a leader. And this relationship with yourself can help you to know when to fight and when to let go. And to do it in a way to let go of old opinions, let go of old perspectives, let go of relationships, let go of companies, let go of fill in the blank. Finally, before I close today, well, actually, I'll go ahead and say, I had 3 objectives in today's presentation. And one was to really give us a fresh perspective on brand, something that is a little bit broader, that can help us to be more adaptable and creative in disruptive climates. Second, to give you 3 questions that can help you to kind of activate that brand power within self, something that really speaks to the heart of you, so that you have a North Star as we go into unknown territories. And third, how to fail forward or allow transformation by using your brand compass so that you know when to fight and when it might be time to let go kindly. As we go ahead and close, though, I do, because I very much believe in the imagination and how important it is for us as human beings and leaders. By the way, we're all leaders, right? Everybody's leading each other. And to remember that who we are and how we show up every day is how we lead ourselves, and how we give examples and model the better behavior, or model where we're going. So what I like to say is the future doesn't happen to us, it's created by us. And to remember that in today's age, in all the chaos that we're going through right now, the future is really only limited by our imagination and our willingness to take small actions towards new future visions. So the question, I know we're talking about brand and coming into our brand, using brand power to become better leaders. But my question for you as we finish today is to really, what future do you want to see? We oftentimes ask ourselves, where are we going? What is destined to happen? The data shows us that this is our trajectory, but we forget that we can shift that at any point in time. If we can start asking ourselves, not where are we going, but where do we actually want to go? And not just in our individual lives, but as a collective. It's really, really important that we ask that question all the time. What future do I want to see? And how can I show up today as that leader? Thank you. So I think we still have a little bit of time. Do we?
We have a minute, but if anybody would like to kind of hang on for a bit to stick around for questions, please do. Thank you so much, Carley. I know that I have benefited greatly from this presentation. I hope that everybody else has as well. Just amazing takeaways. So thank you so much for being here and showing up for us and sharing your story. But yeah, let's take this time for any questions for anybody that has anything for Carley. Please ask in the chat or raise your hand. We'll take some time for that.
And I just want to say, Carley, thank you so much. I love you so much already beforehand, and this just made me love you more. And I hope that everybody got to see her soul. What I said from the beginning, she is such an amazing human being, and I am blessed to call you a friend, and I'm blessed that everybody got to see you in action, because you just, girl, you're a rock star, and I freaking love you. So thank you.
Very kind. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. And I hope that everybody had some takeaways. I know that this is a broader topic and a new way of seeing things. So if there are any questions on kind of, in an organizational context or specifically, and, kind of how to ground things a little bit more, I'm happy to answer any of those questions. And of course, as I mentioned too, any follow-ups, we can have longer conversations, because this is my work. Talk about my humanity mission and excitement. This is my passion area. I could talk about this stuff all day long. So any questions or comments or things that need clarity?
We have one personal question, but I want to hold in case anybody does have something that applies to leadership or their organization or their company. Anybody?
So when you mentioned about the being true to yourself, as well as to leave in a kind way, to recognize when it's time, I think, and you touched on women getting the connection piece more often than other leaders. But I think sometimes women know, maybe explicitly, or they're trying not to say that they know that it's time to leave a job, an organization, a position, a relationship, and they feel responsible. They feel like they don't want to let the company down. And so they hold on longer. Can you speak a little bit to that, of women balancing being a responsible person with making a kind exit?
Absolutely. And what a huge one for, it's so true for women. And as we lead with more love and kindness, we do kind of have this story in our heads sometimes that you can't let other people down.
Mm-hmm.
An organization, relationship, right? We can, any context really. But I think what's really important for us to remember is that part of leading and kind of stepping into empowerment is helping other people to recognize that they can do it on their own. And that nobody needs us. We're here to complement each other. We're here to help each other. But the best way that I can support other people is go, you can figure it out. I know you can do this. And the way that I'm able to show up is not aligned at this point in time. I'm happy to connect you to some other resources if that's desirable. But it's really important that we don't take on, right? If we I talk about it, I actually didn't include, because I don't have all of my notes. That's been a little bit different. So I've left out a few phrases that I think are important. We like to hold on to these sandcastles. And when we do that, and when we stay too long, we prolong suffering. And that, I think, is really important to remember in all contexts as well. If things are misaligned, it's like when the body is misaligned and you go in to see a chiropractor, you start to experience pain in your hand, in the body of your foot, like these random places will start to experience pain, and that pain is coming from misalignment. And so sometimes we have it in our heads that I need to stay, I need to take care of that I need to stretch myself to be uncomfortable. And I mean, like in pain, or not leading at my best, or not in my joy place, or not in my creative zone. But then it's like we're taking away the opportunity from somebody else who could come in and who would be joyful and who would be able to do that job with passion and dedication and really want to be there. So I think it's just remembering that everybody, we have to teach self-leadership. We have to teach people to be empowered, that they don't need us. We're here to support, but they'll figure it out on their own, and to encourage people to do that.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. That's kind of a broad answer, but today is a little broad.
I have a question. So I work with a lot of people that aren't really into, although I am, aren't into, talking in lots of like metaphors and doing lots of like deep work. What are some like ways that I can frame some of these questions for the folks that I manage to help kind of try and uncover sort of what brings them joy and kind of what their personal missions are?
Absolutely. People that I think you had mentioned before, the people that you're managing.
It's guys that work in construction.
Yes.
They're not really into the metaphors and all of that.
I think it's a wonderful question that I can probably think of better ways if I were to think on it for a while. But probably just need to change the phrasing of some of the questions.
Mm-hmm.
I also would not underestimate or think, sometimes we have assumptions, especially when it comes to men of certain roles and statures, that they aren't capable or they don't want to go into this territory. Yeah. And I think that when approached in a certain way also though, if you give people an opportunity, first give them an opportunity to do it. If they resist the work, then there are other ways to kind of shift the question.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I just want everybody to take a personality test. To get to know. There's the Colby test, the predictive index, the DISC profile, Myers-Briggs. All of these things are kind of getting to the core also and can tell us, where people are the best fit, or just what do you like to do? Tell me what you really enjoy. What role would you like to take if you
mm-hmm.
had the choice? But I actually find though too that sometimes these questions, while they're kind of gooey or can seem that way, that actually we're all craving them. And especially right now, this is the beauty of COVID. This is the beauty of this moment in time, is that I think a lot of people disruption breaks us and it reminds us of what's important. And so more people are thinking about these kinds of questions and are open to talking about it. So I would first give them an opportunity and maybe be pleasantly surprised to see that they might want to answer. But otherwise, I'm happy to send too. I think that is one of my kind of to-dos as I'm figuring out how to speak to different audiences on these topics.
Mm-hmm.
How can we phrase things a little bit differently for people who resist this sort of work?
Thank you.
You're welcome.